Welcome to the Rise of the Trades podcast, the show dedicated to helping you to build, grow, and scale your trades or construction business. All rise for your host, Craig Wilkinson.
Welcome to this week's coaching episode of the Rise of the Trades podcast, where we help trades and construction business owners to skyrocket leads, explode net profits without having to graft 60 hours a week and becoming that busy fool. In this episode, I'm going to be teaching you the 15 cash flow disasters to avoid to stop killing your trades or construction businesses' profits. But before we go there, I'd like to announce that the doors for my Inner Circle marketing and business coaching program are now open. So to discover more about joining our program, please click the link in and around the description. Now, let's transition over to this week's coaching episode. What's your biggest challenge in your business around cash flow? I don't think I've ever met anyone running their own business that's not experienced some form of cash flow problem at some point in the growth and the journey of their business. I know I have. In those early years of me setting up my joinery and construction business, I used to have negative cash flow problems. And these money problems caused me some serious amount of anxiety, worry, stress, and then the arguments over money used to start at home, having a negative impact on my relationships. And I remember those sleepless nights that I used to have, tossing and turning and worrying that I had no money in the bank. But I got the wages to pay on Friday, I was behind on my suppliers' invoices, I got my VAT bill imminent, but I got no money. And sometimes I used to feel like there were no way out. There were times where I just wanted to throw in the towel and just walk away from it because the stress and the strain was just overwhelming and overbearing. And no matter how much I tried, no matter how many jobs I ran, no matter how many staff I employed, no matter how many hours I grafted, I could not shake this feeling of stress, worry and anxiety when it came to money. Now, in today and our modern age, mental health and our well-being is now widely talked about. And mental health is a serious condition. But back in 1994, when I first started up my business, I struggled for years with what I know is mental health issues. And mainly, it was all down to having a negative financial situation that I'd put myself in. Now, back then, I never spoke to anybody about how I was feeling, how low I was. It was something that we just got on with, and people didn't accept your whinging and your moaning and your complaining back in the 90s. You just had to grind it out and get on with it. But in today's modern society, speaking out and letting people know how you are feeling is now encouraged. There are now many fantastic organisations for both men and women to turn to if you're struggling mental health wise or financially wise to help you and support you. And I'd like to think that you could reach out to me or to us in our safe, helpful and supportive Trades Freedom Club Facebook group and community if you ever thought you needed somebody to talk to. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this now is because this episode is all around the topic of money. Now, I'm sure not all of you have got challenges around money. I'm sure some of you have got positive cash flow and you're flying. And if you are, fantastic. But if you're not and you do feel as though you need to speak to somebody, or you get to the end of this episode and think, do you know what, I just need help, please either reach out to us or speak to somebody else, because mental health is a serious condition. So grab your notepads, grab your pens and your tablets, and let's get stuck in. Now, I'm sure there's many reasons why you decided to set up your own business. Maybe you wanted to be your own boss, maybe you wanted to be in charge of your own time, and maybe you wanted to make more profit than you did doing your previous employment. And one of the most common reasons why we set up is we do want to make more money. We do want to provide a better lifestyle for yourself and your family. So one of the options is, let's go and set up our own business. And I appreciate that you may be listening to this thinking, Craig, I don't want to make lots of money. Money is not the driver and the be-all and end-all for me. And I get that, and I also appreciate it. But let's face it, you are in the business of making money and healthy net profits. And if you fail to do this, you're going to end up with a cash flow problem. You're going to end up in debt, and even a worst case scenario, you could end up losing your business. Now, I don't believe you set up your business to end up in that worst position. But the reality is, and it's sad, but the reality is the vast majority of small to medium-sized trades and construction businesses are now worse off financially and mentally than they were before. Why? Because they're working 10 times as many hours than they've ever worked before. They're earning probably less money than they've ever earned before. You know, you divide up the amount of hours that you are currently working in your business, and I'm not just talking about on the tools, I'm talking about your pricing, your paperwork, your admin, your marketing, your phone calls, your WhatsApps, all that lot. You add up that and divide it by what you're taking home each week. And for some of you, the stark reality is you could be earning more money subcontracting to somebody else and letting them have all the hassle. So from this point on, I want you to think about your business being a vehicle. And every day when you get up, you walk out your front door, you get into your van or your car or whatever you're getting into, but that is a vehicle, that is your business. And the idea behind this business, behind you riding and driving this vehicle, is for you to make high net profits for the least amount of time. Let me say it again. I want you making high net profits, but for the least amount of time. What is the point of making the money if you haven't got the time to spend it, or you're stressed out, or you're working 6-7 days a week and you can't enjoy the fruits of your labour? There's just no point. So this financial reward that your vehicle provides you with each week or each month or annually each year is now going to dictate and determine your lifestyle. It's going to determine the house you live in, the car you drive, the holidays you have, the savings for your children and your future. It determines everything. Now, everything in business boils down to just two things. And I want you to really make a note of this. Strip everything back out of your business. Strip your marketing out. Strip your systems out. Strip your team out. Strip your customer service out. Strip all of that lot out of your business. And business comes back down to two of the most important things. And these are time and money. Because without you having the time, you can't make more money. And without having the money, you can't enjoy your time. It works both ways. So let me ask you a question about your vehicle right now. Is your vehicle providing you with the money and the time freedom for you to enjoy your lifestyle? Now, when I ask this question to my Inner Circle members on day one of our coaching program, I say, look, be honest with me. You're running your own business. Are you making the profits that you want, and have you got the time back that you want to spend doing what you want to do? Or does your business control the time that you're working, and does your business control your finances? And the answer to that, 99.9999%, is, Craig, if I'm being honest with you, we're not making the money that we want to make for the hard work that we're putting in, and we've certainly not got the time freedom because we're working longer and harder hours now than we've ever worked before. So what's your answer? I want you to be honest with yourself. What is your answer? Because if the answer is yes, you are making the profit and you have got the time freedom, amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. And if there's anything that you can take out of this episode to actually make it even and improve it even better, then go for it. If the answer is no, then you're in the right place, because we're going to start to make a change in your cash flow and your profits right now. Now, you're in the business of making money, so surely you should understand all of the numbers in your business, right? Tell me you understand the numbers in your business. Tell me on a weekly or worst case scenario, monthly, you understand and you're revisiting your hourly rates. Your break-even figures in your business. What do you need to do to break even? Just to switch the lights on in your business. Never mind make a profit. Surely you're looking at your profit and loss statement and seeing how much profit you've made. And listen, let's be realistic. Even the best of us can sometimes make a small loss on jobs because there's some unforeseen circumstances. But surely you're looking at your profit and loss statements every week or every month. What about your gross profit margins? In other words, your profit margins before your overheads have been stripped out of your business. And then more importantly, you'll hear me talking a lot about net profit margins, because it's the net profit margin that's the most important figure. Gross profit is great, but then when you take all your overheads off, you might be making a high gross profit, but you take your overheads off to get your net profit, and you've got a low net profit figure, which means your overheads are crippling your business. Tell me you're looking at your balance sheet. Your balance sheet is the only document in the entire accountancy process that tells you where your business is as of that particular day. Your profit and loss statement are against things that have been and gone, but your balance sheet is where you are at that exact day. What's your business worth that day? Tell me you understand your director's loan account and where you're putting your money and where you're assigning your money to on your director's loan account, because that could be having a negative effect. And please, please tell me you are not scaling your business and trying to grow it without having a cash flow forecast. Because if you haven't got a cash flow forecast of what's coming in and out of your bank account, let's say for the next 12 months, and yes, you've got to estimate it, yes, you've got to guess it, but you've already got a track record of what you've done in the previous year. So if you're not cash flowing out the money coming in and the money going out, how do you know when is the right time to buy that next van? How do you know is the right time to move office? How do you know is the right time to employ the next member of staff? Because if the numbers do not stack up, then you don't do it. And you're not going to know that unless you've got a cash flow forecast. So come on, yes or no? Do you understand all them numbers in your business? Or you monitor them on a weekly or worst case scenario monthly basis? Because if you don't and you're not, you're absolutely winging it. And you are one of these that are keeping your fingers crossed that at the end of every week or at the end of every month, there's enough money left in the bank to cover all your outgoings, pay yourself, pay your staff, and there's some left over. Well, listen, I used to wing it in my business like that. And that put me in a dark, dark place. We have to understand the numbers in our business if we're serious about making more profit and we're serious about scaling it. So let's start off with understanding what the word cash flow actually means. What is cash flow? And you'll hear people talking about positive cash flow and negative cash flow. So let's deal with negative cash flow first, because that's the one that keeps us awake at night. Negative cash flow basically means this. You've got a flow of money that's coming in and out of your business, in and out of your bank. And if the flow of money out of your bank account is going out quicker than what it's coming in, then you've got a cash flow problem. You've got negative cash flow because you can't increase your bank account when you've got more money going out quicker than you've got coming in. So when we talk about negative cash flow, That's exactly what we're talking about. Your money's going out of your bank too quick, and the money coming into your bank account is not coming in quick enough, which leaves you with what we call a cash gap, and that is a negative cash flow. Let me give you an hypothetical example. Let's say you've just quoted a job for 10 grand, and it's a 4-week job, and customer says, Craig, I want to go ahead. Brilliant. If you don't take any money or any stage payments off that job, and you do what idiot me, Muggins here, years and years used to do, which is leave nearly all the money back to the end of the job, because I daren't ask for money. I was scared of asking for money. I didn't understand cash flow. I didn't understand making sure that I got payment terms and all this type of stuff. So I used to leave almost all the money or a big chunk of money to the back end of the job, right? So let's say it's going to cost 10 grand to do that job. And my customer isn't going to pay me any of that 10 grand until the end of the job. That means I've got, over the course of that month until I get paid, I've got to find the money for the materials. I've got to find money for the labour. I've got to find money for my overheads that I'm consuming during that month. And that could be like your van HP or your van insurance, your mobile phone, your marketing spend. That still needs paying for during the course of that month. So if I'm shelling out of my pocket, let's say my bank balance is 0, but I've got to start shelling out for all this, I'm going to go overdrawn before I get the money in at the end of the job, which means I've got a cash gap. I've got a cash flow problem. Now, let's say, well, yeah, but Craig, I might take 50% deposit on a 10 grand job. Okay, let's use them numbers. So halfway through the job, 2 weeks into it, you're going to invoice your customer for 5 grand, and then you're going to get the other 5 grand on completion, right? That still means that you are 5 grand short. You've got a 5 grand cash gap. And what happens when you get to the end of that job? Let's say that there's a little dispute and customers arguing toss and they want you to come down on price. Or you get to the end of the job and they say, I'll pay you. But you know what some customers are like? It can take weeks. So now let's say it takes an extra week. So now you've got to bridge that 5 grand negative deficit for 5 weeks. Now you might say, Craig, it's 5 grand. It's not like life breaking, is it? To some people, 5 grand is life breaking. But as you start to scale your business, let's ramp this up. And let's say that's just 5 grand owed over 5 weeks that you've got to fund. Somehow you've got to fund that because you've got a cash gap. Now, let's say as you start to grow your business and some years further down the line, let's just say that you've got 10 jobs on the go or 10 customers on the go that all owe you that 5 grand. You've now got a cash gap and a cash flow deficit and a negative cash flow of 50 grand. So now the numbers are starting to escalate. And as your business grows, you might start to take on bigger jobs or bigger projects. So let's say that 5 grand has now become 25 grand because you're doing bigger jobs. And now you've got 25 grand owed to you at the end of the job. 25 grand times your 10 customers is 250 grand. Now you're £250,000 in a negative cash flow. And it's at that point when you start to have sleepless nights. It's at that point where you start to think, hang on a minute, what happens if this main contractor or what happens if a couple of these customers don't pay me for whatever reason? What happens if the main contractor who's further up the chain from me, what happens if they've not got a grip of their numbers and they go bust and then that's having a knock-on effect with me and I don't get me 25 grand? Then you're in the shit. That's when you start having sleepless nights because you've got negative cash flow. Now, some of you will be thinking, Craig, I'm prepared to do that, especially for you guys who are in commercial sector, because a lot of the times you're governed by payment terms of the big boys, aren't you? You know, you can't go in and start demanding that you want paying at end of every week and you want interim payments here and you want these deposits. The big boys, the main contractors say, listen, if you want to tender for this job, these are our payment terms, like it or lump it, because there'll be 10 others queuing up to take that work on. So for me, commercial work, although it can be very fruitful and profitable if you get the numbers right, it comes with risk, because you've got to wait a long time, sometimes 60, sometimes 90 days to get your money in. So what you're now going to have to do is you've got to somehow finance and fund that 60 to 90 day cash gap. So what do? You go and get an overdraft facility from bank, or you go and get a bank loan to facilitate that cash gap. And again, because you're putting yourself at high risk, there's always that seed of doubt in the back of your mind. What if I don't get paid? And I'm sorry, but I look at business as in risk. So what I want to teach you is about positive cash flow and not having those cash gaps. And what do you need to do to make sure that a positive cash flow is entered into your business? And what we mean by that is it's the opposite to a negative cash flow. Positive cash flow is where you slow down the payments that are going out of your bank, but speed up the payments that are coming in. And if you've always got more money coming into your bank than you've got going out, then you've never got a cash flow problem. You've never got a gap in cash, because you've always got more money in than's actually due out. Now, even if you're sat there going, Craig, that's me, I've got positive cash flow, right? I want to share this with you. You can still get in financial difficulty. Even if you know that your business is making profit, you can still get in financial difficulty. And that boils down to your profits. So even though you've got a positive cash flow and you've always got money coming in quicker than you've got going out, if the money coming in is not profitable money, in other words, you're not making high net profits on any of your projects, then you're going to be in trouble, because you might have got a positive cash flow, but when you put it all through your bank account, you're not making enough profit. So therefore you end up with a negative cash flow and you end up in a sticky situation, because the money's coming in, but not enough's coming in because you've priced the job wrong. Are you with me? So you can still end up in a predicament where you end up with a negative cash flow because of the way in which you're pricing jobs, which again comes down to understanding and knowing your numbers. Because if you understood your numbers and you're allowing the right labour and materials on a job, and you know what gross and net margins you should be doing, and you know what your hourly rate is, and you know what your break-even figure is, you should never be in a position where you've got negative cash flow and you're making a loss. Now, there are lots and lots of different reasons why you are either A, losing money, and B, creating yourself a negative cash flow problem. So let's cover some of the most important mistakes that I've made, that I see other people making, that's rife throughout our industry, right? So let's highlight what them mistakes are and what you need to avoid doing, because there'll be certain things that you're doing right now in your business that's causing you financial stress, and we've got to get to grips with that, and we've got to unpick it and make sure that we don't do that in the future. So here are my 15 most important things that will kill your cash flow and have a massive negative effect on your business. Grab your notes, grab your pens, grab your tablets, write down these 15 different cash flow killers. Killer number 1 is very simple. You may not have enough work coming in to keep you or your team busy. You might just have not got enough work coming in, whether that's over a week, a month, a quarter, or longer than that. And if you've not got enough work coming in to pay your wages, to pay your overheads, then that means that you are going to be in trouble. And that all boils down to your existing marketing strategy and your lead generation. That is going to need improving. So I speak to so many businesses that go, Craig, I'm just not generating leads. And I'm saying to them, okay, I get that. So what are you doing? Well, I've got a website and I post on Facebook and I post on Instagram and I've tried boosting my posts on Facebook and I'm in a magazine article and I've attended a networking event. And I go, is that it? Is that it? Is that all you're doing? There's no wonder you've got no work coming in, no leads coming in. You've got to be relentless in today's day and age in pursuit of success when it comes to your marketing and lead generation. If you're dicking about with a website that doesn't generate your leads or posting a couple of times on social media and that's about it, wake up. You should be doing a hell of a lot more than that. You should be doing video marketing. You should be doing email marketing. You should be doing SMS marketing. You should have identified who your target market are and where we can find them in the highest concentration. You need to be using SEO and high converting websites and landing pages and funnels. You need to be doing email and SMS marketing. You need to have lead magnets. You need to be advertising in magazines. You need to be going to networking events. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Because in today's day and age, there is so much competition and so much noise out there. If you're not getting the leads, it's going out to the people that are relentless with their advertising and marketing. It's very simple. The more you advertise, the more leads you get. So if you sat there moaning about, I ain't got enough leads coming in, then it's simple. You're not doing enough when it comes to marketing. So killer number one, you've got to get working on your marketing strategy. Killer number two. Your marketing is generating your leads, but the leads that are coming in always seem to be from time wasters or tire kickers or people that want to chip you down on price or want things doing for nothing, right? If you're attracting lots of these time wasters and tire kickers, then clearly you don't know who your target market is. And clearly you've got no vetting process in place to vet out these time wasters and tire kickers. And this is where I talk about having your vetting forms to put people through your vetting form so we can get information off them, such as budget, timescales, get them to send you photos or videos of the job so you can look at it, look at the price, look at the budget, and then make a judgment call based on what they're sending you. Actually, is it worth my time even going to look at this job? And the answer to many of them questions will be no, it's not. If it is, you ring them up, you give them a budget price, then you go out and see them. Remember, everything in business comes down to time and money. So if you're giving your valuable time up looking at jobs and then getting ghosted after it, they clearly weren't your target market because you've not vetted them. So vetting processes are going to help either bring in a negative cash flow or a positive cash flow. Cash flow killer number 3, you are not pricing your jobs correctly. Because if you were pricing them correctly, you would be making net profit, right? Now, you will be either underestimating on time, or maybe the jobs take longer, maybe due to things outside your control, like weather conditions. And I know for a fact that roofers, people like rendering, landscape gardeners, people that do a lot of work outside, with the weather conditions we've been having recently, they're getting absolutely crippled when it comes to profit because they can't work because it's bouncing down with rain. So yeah, there's certain things that are outside your control. Maybe you've brought other trades in to follow you on, or you're maybe a building contractor and plasterer can't come, or plumber can't come, or electrician can't come. Now your job's on hold. Now there's no point in going at job and doing anything on it because you can't until another trade's been in. So other trades are letting you down, right? Maybe it's your customers can't make decisions and you need a decision off your customer. For whatever reason, your jobs aren't being priced correctly. You're not allowing the right amount of time and money and materials on your job. But let's break that down into cash flow killer number 4. And that is your labour costs. Underestimating your labour costs. Because you need to understand what your hourly rate is for your employed members of staff and what your hourly rate is for your subcontractors. Because if you take your employed members of staff into consideration, you've got their wages, you've got their tax, you've got their national insurance, you've got their holiday pay. All that lot needs factoring in. If you also employ staff, you've got a pension that you might be contributing towards, because legally now you've got to offer all your employed members of staff a state pension. So you've got to be paying into that pension. Private pension that you need to be paying into. So have we worked out what the cost of that is? But then there are things like this. What about downtime for things like weather? I mean, surely if you know that you're a roofer and you are going to be spending 3 months of the year rained off as the climate's changing, surely you should be factoring that 3 months downtime into your prices. You can't just not work for 3 months, can you? So you need to be factoring things like weather into it. You also need to be factoring in your employees do not work 8.5 hours a day, do they? They've got breaks that come off that. Then there's unproductivity time where they're not like a machine where they're at it constantly and they never stop. They stop, they have a breather, they're not working at capacity. So what we do when we're teaching people about pricing jobs is we say, don't price for 8 hours. You're never going to get 8 hours a day out of one person. You'll be lucky if you get 6 hours of man days or women days work-wise out of someone. So we say, don't allow for 8 hours. You price it like they're working 6 hours a day. Are you with me? So there's all these different considerations that you need to take into consideration when working out your labour costs. Likewise with subbies. If a subcontractor says, right, I want 220 quid a day, what, you put it in at 220 quid a day, do you? Or do you put it in more than 220 quid a day? Or for some of you, you'll be putting it in less just to buy the work in because you're not busy and you're trying to buy work in to keep you busy. And all that's got to stop. Cash flow killer number 5. You're underestimating the material costs on a job. In other words, you're getting to end at job and you're thinking, blimey, these materials have took a lot more than I thought it were going to be. So therefore, I've lost money. And if you're only almost breaking even on a job, you can't be losing money on things like labour and materials and school boy and girl errors, can you? So estimating the right amount of materials, what are you using for wastage? Because you've got to put some wastage in, which goes towards any additional materials. Likewise, when we went through that horrific situation years ago with COVID, where some year giving a customer a price, and then you honour that price, and then through COVID, prices went sky high, and then some of you continue to do the job at the same price as what you'd originally quoted. How? How can you do that? You're in the process of making money, not in the process of keeping yourselves busy. So you're underestimating when it comes to the material costs. So how are you pricing your materials? Is your materials in line with the costs that your suppliers are quoting you? Because we know from experience with my construction company that you'd set your prices with your suppliers and then you think that's what you're paying. And then on the odd chance you check your invoice, you go, hang on a minute, price has gone up. And what your suppliers have done is they've put the prices up behind the scenes because you know they're not going to challenge you on it. Are you with me? So how are you estimating materials on your jobs? Cash flow killer number 6. And that is you do not know what your break-even figure is in your business. And what I mean by your break-even figure is your overhead contribution when you're pricing your jobs, because you've got overheads that you're incurring every day, every week, every month, every year, right, in your business. And those overheads have got to be added on to the cost of a job. Because if not, if you're not adding an overhead contribution onto your job, who's paying for the overheads? That's coming out of the little bit of profit that you're making, and then all of a sudden, the little bit of profit you've made on that job, you didn't realise that you've got to pay all these overheads, now you're losing money. So you need to work out what your break-even figure is. In other words, what does it cost you just to switch the lights on in your business? Because if you got up today and you didn't work for the next month or the next 6 weeks, and God forbid, but let's say, something like this could happen. Let's say that you're ill and you're ill for the next 6 weeks and you're bringing no money in. You've still got outgoings going out because you've got all your overhead contributions to your van, to your insurances, to your office, to your lockup, to your marketing, to your accountant, to your health and safety advisor, whatever overheads you're paying. They're still going out. The fixed costs, they're still going out regardless of whether you work or not. So you need to work out what do those overheads altogether throughout the year cost you, and then how are you going to divvy that up per job, per man, per woman, per hour? How do you divvy that up? So we've got to make sure that not only when we're pricing our jobs that we're allowing for the right labour and the right materials, we need to be adding a figure or a percentage onto that price to cover the cost of our overheads. And for many of you, you will not be adding in your break-even figure or your overhead contribution when you're pricing your jobs. And if you don't do that, you're going to end up with a cash gap. Cash flow killer number 7. You do not know what your gross or net profit margins are, and therefore you are not allowing the right margin, the right profit margin when you're pricing your jobs. Because when we're pricing jobs, we not only factor in the labour, not only factor in the materials, not only factor in the break-even overhead contribution. Once we've got those figures, then we need to add on a percentage to cover our gross and net profits. And if you don't know what that profit margin is, how do you know that you're covering enough profit on that job? How do you know you're going to make money on that job? You don't, because you're not adding on the right net or profit margins. Now, very quickly, so your gross profit is basically, I'm selling something at 10 grand. It's cost me 500 in labour and it's cost me £200 in materials. So therefore, it's cost me £700. You're invoicing it at £1,000, so you're saying I've made £300 profit. No, you've made £300 gross profit. That's not profit, that's gross. Off that gross profit figure of £300, you've then got to deduct all your overheads off it, and then you've got to deduct your tax off it, which then leaves you with your net profit. So you need to understand how to work those two vital numbers out. And what I'm going to suggest you do is at the end of this episode, if you go and listen to episode number 6, on it, I beg your pardon, episode 7, I've got an episode called Gross and Net Profit Margins Explained and How to Work Out Your Numbers. So if you're struggling to understand and work out your gross and net profit margins, head over to episode 6 at the end of this episode and go and listen to that podcast. Cash flow killer number 8. And we're still on with pricing here. Remember, these so far have all been around you pricing your jobs wrong. Cash flow killer number 8 is you knock your own price down. And I see it all the time. And tell me if this is what you've done. You work out a price, however you're working it out, whether you're working it out right or whether you're just winging it and you're working it out wrong. But you work your price out and you look at it and you go, blimey, that looks a lot. I can't charge that much for that job. Would I actually pay that? Probably wouldn't, no. So what do you go and do? You look at that figure that you've come up with that should be right, and you go, I tell you what, let me think of a figure that I'm just going to pluck out of fresh air and I'm going to knock that figure off. So you'll look at your own price and you'll go, I'll just knock 500 quid off. Yeah, that sounds about right. Let's just knock 500 quid off. And then you put that price in and it's like, then you get the job and then you're like, why did I knock 500 quid off? Stop knocking your own prices down. If you're pricing the jobs correctly, we've got the right labour, we've got the right materials, we've got the right overhead, we've got the right margin on, whatever that comes up with is the right price. So don't look at it and say, would I pay that? No, let me knock 500 quid off, because that's just ridiculous. You've got to stop doing that. So stop knocking your own prices down. Cash flow killer number 9. So, you finish a job, but you're busy. And you've got other customers screaming at you. You're late on jobs. You're running behind on jobs. You should have started a job yesterday. And for whatever reason, because you're busy, you don't get your flipping invoices out on time. So you sat there and it could be weeks or even months before you get your invoices out to customers and before you get that money in your bank. How on earth can you scale and grow a business when you're creating yourself negative cash flow problems because you haven't got time to get your money in? Get the damn invoices out. And if you follow what I teach you, you should never get to the end of the job and not have been paid. Okay, on commercial sector, when you're dancing with big boys, I get that, you're at liberty of their payment terms. But particularly, let's say for domestic users, you should be getting paid that final payment before your tools have even gone in van and wrapped up that day. And that includes all your team that are working on customers' jobs as well. Why can't you turn your mobile phone into a card terminal? And you've already explained to your customer that on final day at job you need to take payment. You send them the invoice well before the end of the job, and then you take payment on final day of your job. That speeds up the flow of cash coming in, but you waiting until you've got 5 minutes at some point to raise an invoice and send it, that's just crazy. So stop being your own barrier. Stop being your own obstacle and hurdle on getting your money into your bank. Okay, I've still got 5 cash flow killers to come, and I'm throwing in a bonus pro tip. So, cash flow killer number 10, payment terms. Payment terms. You've got to become what I call a cash-rich company. And when I talk about cash-rich companies, they're the ones that have got a positive cash flow. In other words, they've got more money coming in quicker than they've got going out. So they become cash-rich. They've always got more money in the bank than they need to pay out. And this needs to transcribe through into your payment terms. So you've got to make sure that whatever payment terms you're setting in your business, that you've always got more money off the job, i.e. you've always got more money off the customer than what you've paid out in labour and materials, let's say, on that job. So should anything ever go wrong or have a dispute with a customer, you've always got enough money off that job to be able to pay your labour, your materials, your overheads, and a little bit of profit left over. So you've got to structure your payment terms to suit that. So what I would suggest you do is, number 1, you take deposits, right? You take deposits and you set what deposit percentage or figure that is, but that needs to be a decent deposit up front. Number 2, you set interim payments throughout the project. Now, if it's a small job where literally you're going to be there one day, are you saying to me, Craig, that I've got to take a deposit, an interim payment in the morning, and then take a final payment in the afternoon? No, I'm not. What I'm saying is, if it's a one-day job, your deposit would be a huge deposit, leaving a final bit left to the end of the day. However, if you're a building contractor like me, and you're on a 10, 12-week extension build or something like that, you would take a big deposit up front and then you'd have stage payments throughout the project. Either way, those payments are designed that you've always got more money off the job than you've put into it. Then what you do is you leave a final figure, and that's got to be the smallest amount you feel as though you can get away with at the end of every job. You set the smallest amount. You should never get to the end of the job and still be left thousands and thousands of pounds, or you shouldn't be left with a high percentage of money left at the end of any job, you should have had that money off and you leave a small amount due at the end. Now, this is not being unethical. This is not ripping anybody off or anything like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about structuring your payments to become a cash-rich company and put yourself in a position where they've got a positive cash flow. Remember, you need more money coming in than you've got going out, and we do that by structuring our payment terms to suit. Cash flow killer number 11. Terms and conditions. Okay, terms and conditions. You've got to have your own terms and conditions put in place that your customer or your client agrees, abides by and signs. Which means if there are any disputes from your customer on the job, or they're trying it on, or they're stalling for time, or they're trying not to pay you, or they don't want to pay you for these extras, or they thought this were included in job, why am I being invoiced extra for it? All them disputes should be sorted and written into your terms and conditions. So when you get to the end of a job or any part throughout the job, you just refer back to your terms and conditions, and then the customer or client pays you. Because if they're not going to pay you based on you not putting T's and C's together and it's their word against yours, then you're not safeguarding the asset of your business, which is going to negatively impact your cash flow forecast. Now, if you need help in creating your terms and conditions and your subcontractors agreements, at the end of this podcast, head back over to episode number 5 called How to Create Your Bulletproof T's and C's and Subcontractors Agreements with Michael Long. So go and check that episode out if you need any help with your T's and C's. And then go and check out episode number 14, how to structure your payment terms to avoid negative cash flow problems. So in them 2 episodes, I break these down into even more detail so you can get crystal clear clarity of how you do this. Cash flow killer number 12. Poor creditor and poor debtor days. Now, remember what we're talking around cash flow, okay? Cash flow is, or negative cash flow, is whereby your money is going out of the bank quicker than you've got coming in. And this is where your creditor and your debtor days comes into play. Now, I'm sure you'll have heard of creditor and debtor days, but your accountants generally speak to you about this, and there will be more in-depth details inside your financial year-end accounts if you are a limited company. Everything is in there. But let me just explain what I mean first by debtor days. Your debtor days refers to how long it takes your customers or your clients to pay you. How long does it take them on average to pay you on one of your jobs? Now, some might pay you quicker than others, but on average, over the course of a 12-month period, how long does it take you? And there's a formula and a math that you use to work out, on average, over the course of that year, how long it took me for my clients to pay me, all right? Now, your creditor days refers to the average number of days it takes you and your business to pay your suppliers. Okay, so that's the opposite. It's how long does it take you to pay all your suppliers off? Now, usually, businesses with poor cash flow have got these the wrong way around. In other words, the creditor days, which is how long does it take your business to pay your suppliers, usually that figure is less than debtor days, which is how long it takes your customers to pay you. So let's say, for argument's sake, your creditor days is 15, which means it takes 15 days on average for you to pay your suppliers. But your debtor days, which is your customers paying you, is at 30, then clearly we've got a problem, because you're paying your suppliers quicker than your customers are paying you. How it should be is your debtor days, who are your customers, they should be paying you quicker, so they should be They should be 0 days because you want paying at the end of every job. It shouldn't even roll over to 1 day. You're waiting 1 day. But so they should be 0 days, ideally. And your creditor days, which is when you pay your suppliers, might be 30 days because your suppliers give you 30 days credit terms. Are you with me? But your debtor days has got to be lower than your creditor days, or otherwise you've got cash flow problems. Cash flow killer number 13, overheads. Your overheads could be killing your business because the overheads are too big for the size of business that you are. And this is this is the classic mistake that people make. Right, I've got all this work coming in, my marketing's working, I've got all these leads coming in. This is brilliant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grow and scale my business because now I can take more work on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and take on another team, maybe another, let's say, engineer or another joiner or plasterer or brickay or sparky or whatever. I'll take on another tradesperson, qualified, and I might then go and take on another apprentice to go and work with them. But doing that, they're going to need a van. So now I'm going to have to go and get another van. And then insurance is going to go up. I'm going to need another insurance. And this is brilliant because now I'm sort of like coming off the tools and I'm fed up of working out from my third back bedroom or on my dining room table. Now's the time for me to go and take an office on and leave home, working from home, and go and get an office and a lock-up. So all of a sudden, you've got the work coming in. You start to increase your overheads, but your overheads now are increasing and are now eating into the profit margins. And this is the classic mistake that people make, and I made it. And this is where I hear of and see these businesses that have got 10, 15 vans on road, got beautiful offices, got work coming out of their ears, got a smart looking website. And then the business owner comes to me and says, Craig, I'm turning over a couple of million quid a year here, mate, and I've got all these vans on road and I've got all these offices and all this staff, and on face value it looks amazing, but do you know what? I'm not making any money. I'm paying my subbies more than I'm paying myself. And that's the classic mistake of you've grown, took too many overheads on, and the overheads are now eating into the profit, which is now giving you a negative cash flow. Are you with me? And on top of that, all of that stress in growing and scaling and having multiple jobs with multiple customers and loads of people working for you. It's stressful. So if you're going to make that move and make that jump, you have to understand the numbers in your business because they're going to tell you whether it's the right move to make at this time or it's not. Or it might be, do you know what? It's the right move, but to counteract the additional costs and overheads, we've got to put our prices up. Because what's the point of going and taking more work on, more staff on, more jobs on, taking offices on and another van with another team in it, to then sit and look at your accounts at the end of that year and go, well, hang on a minute, I've only made 10 grand more than I did last year. What were the point in doing that? Well, if you knew your numbers, it would have told you not to have done it. Are you with me? So your overheads could be killing your business. How do you know how to work your overheads out? How do you know how to work your overhead contribution out? How do you know when it's the right time to scale up or not to scale up if you don't know the numbers in your business? It's just absolutely crazy. And I see it day in, day out from people who say, look at me, Billy Big Balls, I've got all this work, all these vans, I'm in London, I'm in Manchester, I'm in Glasgow, we've got lads all over the country. And I'm like, yeah, but how much net profit are you making? Well, not a lot. Well, what's the point then? Cash flow killer number 14. And that is, you are not separating your money into different bank accounts. Smart business owners will start separating their money into different bank accounts and splitting the money up so all the money's not coming into one current account. Because let's face it, if you're running a business and you've only got one account, That means all of your customers are paying their invoices into that current account. All your suppliers are being paid out of that current account. All your wages for your employed staff and subbies are being paid out of that account. Your VAT is coming out of that account. Your tax is coming out of that account. How the hell do you know what's yours and what's left for you and the profit at the end of each job or at the end of each week or month or however you're analysing your numbers? You don't. So some months you look in it and you think, flipping heck, I've got all this money in bank, I'm doing amazing. And then before you know it, you've paid your CIS, you've paid your VAT, you've paid your tax, you've paid your suppliers, and then you're back into your overdraft and it's like, where's all money gone? Where's it all gone? So what we've got to do is we've got to separate our money into a minimum of what I'm going to suggest is 4 different bank accounts or pots, because these online banks now, such as Starling, you can have a bank account and then you can set up pots in there where you can move money to. So here's what I'm going to suggest you do. Number 1, you've got your current account and you've all got one of them already. And that current account is only used for transactions coming in and going out. In other words, you're going to pay your suppliers from that account and your customers are going to pay you into that account. So that's your current. You're then going to set up another account or another pot, and that's called a tax account. And that is where your self-assessment tax, and if you're a limited company, your corporation tax, if you've got any tax to pay, that is, if you make profit, every week or every month, you put your money into your tax account and you leave it. You do not touch it. Third account is going to be your VAT account, where if you're VAT registered, you're going to put the VAT that you take into a VAT account. And my rule of thumb is put all 20% of what the customers paid you into that account. Because when you then put 20% into your VAT account, you know that you're always going to have enough VAT money. And you also know that because you can claim your VAT back on your materials and your purchases, you're not going to be paying 20%, you're going to be paying less than that. So let's say, for argument's sake, you've put 10 grand in a VAT account, but then when you reclaim your purchases back, you only owe the VAT man 7 grand. You've got spare surplus cash of £3,000 sat in that VAT account. What you then do is you set up account number 4, which is a savings account. And what you do in that savings account is you move that VAT surplus into your savings. So you start saving a bit of money in your VAT account, but then you move it into your savings account. And then what you would do, periodically, that could be every month, every quarter, every 6 months, or every year, worst case scenario, is you'll sit down with your accountant and you'll say, right, let's work as numbers out, let's work as accounts out, how much profit have we made after tax? And then what you can do then is you can take that tax out of that take that profit out of the current account and put it into your savings account. And then you start to have a rainy day pot. You start to build some surplus funds that we can start to reinvest back into your business. So you need 4 different bank accounts to split your money up, or otherwise you haven't got a clue what's yours, what's HMRC's, what's your suppliers, what's wages. You don't know if it's all coming into one account. Now, we've got cash flow killer number 15, and we've got a bonus pro tip for your left. So cash flow killer number 15 is you need to know the numbers in your business. It's as simple as that. And what I mean by this is you don't have to become an accountant. You don't have to become a bookkeeper. But what you need to understand is the numbers in your business and the, let's say, technical jargon that some of your accountants will start to use on you, where they're explaining things to you, maybe looking at your overdrawn director's loan account, and you're sat there nodding your head as though you know what it is, but in reality, you ain't got a clue what they're talking about. Or your net and your gross profits, your accountant's explaining to you that your gross and net profit margins are this, and you're sat there nodding your head like you understand, but you ain't got a Scooby-Doo. You've got to understand these numbers. You don't have to become the accountant, but you need to understand what they are and how to read them. So I started off at the beginning of this episode by rattling off some important numbers that you need to understand and know. Now I want you to get crystal clear on them. So these, for me, are the numbers or what you need to understand and know to start off with. And if you can understand what these are, I guarantee that you'll start to make more profit and you'll never have a negative cash flow problem moving forward. So let's just rattle through these. Number one, your hourly rate. You've got to work out what your hourly rate is for your labour, whether that's a subcontractor, whether that's for you, whether that's for your apprentice, or whether that's for a tradesperson, or whether you're going to club all that lot together and get a weighted average. But you need to understand what your hourly rates are, because if you're getting this wrong and you're pricing jobs on the wrong hourly rate, you're going to have a cash flow problem. Number two, your break-even figure. You need to understand how much profit do I need to make in my business just to switch the lights on. Remember, you've got fixed costs, you've got fixed overheads in your business that need paying for whether you're working or not, whether you're making profit or not. Somebody's still got to pay for those overheads. So you need to work out how many boilers a year do I need to fit just to break even. How many solar panels do I need to fit just to break even? How many paving slabs do I need to lay just to break even? In my case, it were how many loft conversions do we need to build just to break even? And you'll be shocked and surprised, because sometimes you can break it down like this. Hang on a minute. I've got to work all day Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and part of Thursday just to pay my overheads, and then what I make Thursday afternoon and Friday is mine. Is that it? Is that how it works? Well, yeah, it could be. It could be as something as that. But you're never going to know that until you know what your break-even figure is. Number three, your profit and loss statement. Now, if you are using accountancy software such as Xero or QuickBooks or Free Agent or Sage, all these reports are inside your software. It's not like you've got to become a mathematician or an accountant. As long as your accounts are up to date in your software, you can just click a button and pull a report off that will give you a profit and loss. That'll give you a profit and loss based per job, profit and loss based per time scale. Like, let me look at my profit and loss for this month's. In other words, all the jobs combined, what does all that lot add up to? And you should start to be able to work out what type of profit you're making. We don't want to be looking at loss. We shouldn't be doing jobs that are making a loss. They all need to be profitable. From that, we can then strip out number 4, which is your gross profit margin. In other words, what's the profit margin or percentage I'm making on each job or given period of time from a gross profit point of view? And remember, your gross profit is your labour and your materials deducted from the price you've quoted is your gross profit. But that's not the profit that you walk away with from your job. That's just gross profit. Because number 5, what I want you to go away and look at, is your net profit. And that's the most important figure. And the net profit is devised from, you take your gross profit figure. So let's say you've made £300 after your labour and materials have been paid on your job. You've made £300. Off that £300 then, you need to take your overhead contribution off. So while you've been on that job, you've incurred overheads. So what percentage or what figure are you going to deduct to pay towards your overheads? So you deduct your overhead contribution off your gross profit. And then you've still not finished, because that profit is then taxed, isn't it? Especially if you're a limited company, you're going to pay corporation tax on it. So then we need to take off a percentage for your corporation tax, which can be anywhere between 19% and 26%, which is basically a quarter. So let's say you've got 300 quid gross profit, and then your overheads have accumulated to 200 quid, leaving you with £100. But then we've got to take, say, 25% off that for tax. You've made £75 profit. That's yours. So you need to understand your gross and net profit. Balance sheet. If your accounts are up to date, the strength of your business and where it's at, your assets and your money in bank is all there for you to see. So in other words, your balance sheet is, if you were to wrap up your business today and you were to pay everybody off that you owe money to, and you were to bring all the money in that's owed to you, that is what you're left with in your bank. And you need that figure to be as high as you can, because the more money that's left in the bank, the better for you. And then if you are thinking of bringing an investor in, or you want to borrow money from bank, then obviously your balance sheet is something that they're going to look at. You don't want to ever have a negative balance sheet. Then what I want you to do is I want you to go and look at your director's loan account and what your accountant is putting into your director's loan account. Because what we don't ever want to have is an overdrawn director's loan account that's now having a negative effect on our numbers. So you need to speak to your accountant about your loan account. And then finally is the cash flow forecasting. Because everything that we've just spoke about today, money coming in, money going out, you need to forecast that, and you need to put it onto either a spreadsheet or into some software that's going to calculate each month, this is what I've got coming in, this is what I've got going out. But what would happen if in 2 months' time we started a marketing campaign that generates us an extra 10 leads a week? And if our conversion rate is 50%, we're going to win 5 new jobs. So what's the profit off them 5 new jobs? Let's plot that on. Then what you can say is, to get that profit from those 5 jobs, I've got to employ another team. What does the team need? Well, they need a van, they need tools, they need insurance, they need this, they need that. Okay, now let's look at that cost. And if that cost is greater than the profit that they're going to make, then you don't take that team on. However, if the profit is greater and your quid's in, then you can take the team on because you know it's going to work. So that's what we mean when we're talking about cash flow forecasting. So they're the numbers that I need you to go away and start working on and to get crystal clear on, so that you become a cash-rich company and you've got a positive cash flow. Now, I've already suggested that most business, not all, but most of the people that will be listening to this podcast, most of you will be winging it when it comes to them numbers, right? And you'll be just keeping your fingers crossed that whatever you're quoting is the right figure and there's enough profit in that job. You'll be keeping your fingers crossed that you've got your hourly rates and your materials right. You'll be keeping your fingers crossed that you've got enough money to pay for your overheads. You'll be keeping your fingers crossed that your customer's going to pay you on time and there's going to be no disputes. And you'll be keeping your fingers crossed that at the end of all that, there's enough money left in the bank for you. Well, listen, you can't build and grow and scale a business and create a vehicle that's going to provide you and your family with a lifestyle that you deserve if you're winging it with these numbers. So, if you're doing that and hoping I've got enough wages to cover my wages, I hope there's enough to cover my dividends, I hope there's enough to cover my overheads, I hope there's enough to cover my VAT, I hope there's enough to cover my self-assessment, I hope there's enough to cover my corporation tax. If you're winging it and doing that, you need to get help. So, my bonus pro tip is this. Your accountant. You see, your accountant should be part of your team. That's what they're there for. Your accountant should be working with you side by side to help you understand these numbers, to help you put all these projections in place if you don't know how to do it, and to help you make more profit and increase your margins whilst safeguarding and not letting you overpay on taxes. That's what my accountant does for me. Now, if you are one of these that don't know the numbers and you dread speaking to your accountant and you only ever hear off your accountant a couple of times a year, like, I need your books and accounts in, Craig, because your year end's coming up. can you give me login details to Xero so I can do it? And then they go and run your accounts. You have a meeting with them. You sit down with them. They're talking about overheads, VAT, self-assessment, corporation tax, overdrawn director's loan account, gross margins, net margins. And you're sat there thinking, what the fuck is he talking about here? I've got a clue what's going off. And you're signing your accounts off not knowing. I'm telling you now, you're leaving money on the table. Because I'm guessing your accountant has missed something because you're not challenging them. I'm guessing that your accountant may be treating you as just another client, just another number, and they're not there to hold your hand and help you grow your business. Whereas my accountant, we have monthly meetings, we have management meetings. She'll tell me where to put my money, what to go away and buy. You know, Craig, go and buy a Tesla, went and bought a Tesla. Craig, go and buy this, so I go and buy that. She shows me and tells me what I need to do. Craig, go and put some money in a private pension because would you rather pay that corporation tax to HMRC, or would you rather keep that money and put it into a private pension tax-free for yourself? All this lot is what they do. And they help me with all the numbers. And I didn't used to understand any of this. Remember, I was that classic busy fool. I was the one that were having sleepless nights. But I realised that scaling a business, I've got to learn the numbers. So I went and I sat down with them and I paid for a bit of their time and I got to understand what these numbers were. I didn't have to become an accountant, but I can speak their language and I know what the numbers are and I can challenge them on them. But my accountant works with me to help me make more profit and not overpay on taxes. What does your accountant do? Because if you're only hearing from them every couple of times a year and there's no communication, and then you just get a letter saying you owe X amount in VAT or X amount in corporation tax, and you go to your bank account and the money's not there, something is drastically wrong, and you cannot continue to do what you're doing, because the bigger you grow, the deeper the hole you're going to go in. So my pro bonus tip is look at your accountant. If they're not providing you with the service, I would suggest moving them on and getting an accountant that is prepared to work with you. And if you have got faith in your accountant, I want you to contact them immediately, get a meeting booked in with them, sit down with them and say, right, where do I start? Because I don't understand this, and this. Can you help me? I'm prepared to pay for your time. Help me sort it out. Help me put these numbers in place. Help me understand them. Help me put the projections. Help me put the forecast. Help me work out my overheads. Help me work out my break-even figure. Help me work out my hourly rate. That's what they're there to do. And if you're struggling and you can't find anyone, drop a message to us in our Trades Freedom Club Facebook group and let other people recommend their accountants to you. I'm happy to recommend my accountant to you if need be. And let's work together to help you solve this cash flow problem that's probably been keeping you awake at night. Now, what actions are you going to take away from this episode? There's no point in listening to this and nodding and saying, I agree with you, Craig. You might not agree with me on everything, but there'll be certain things that you can pull out of this episode where you think, do you know what? He's got a point. I need to go away and do that. So what is it that you're going to do? And what I'm going to suggest to you is you can't do all of this in one go. So what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to, number one, first and foremost, get a meeting with your accountant first and foremost. That's an absolute given, right? So go and do that. Then what I want you to do is I want you to choose 3 of these 15 areas, these 15 cash flow killers that need to be worked on and improved, because there's not enough hours in a day to get them all done in a wanna. So just choose 3. Then once you've chosen them 3, go and set time inside your default diary. So you've got time blocked out to go and work on your business and work on these 3 areas. Focus and concentrate on getting those 3 areas nailed, right? And then once you've got them nailed, go back to the list and get the next 3. And let's chunk these down into bite-sized manageable chunks so nothing feels overwhelming. Do 3 at a time and then go back to the list and pick another 3 off. And then once you've done all 15 of these, because they're all necessary, once you've done all 15 of these, I absolutely guarantee that, number one, you'll be able to sleep at night. Number 2, you'll become a cash-rich company. Number 3, you'll be making more profit than you've ever made before. And number 4, you'll have got an accountant that's there side by side at the side of you to help you scale your business. So they're your action tasks on what I want you to go away and do from this episode. Now, if you are feeling like you need more help and support with the coaching around all the numbers in your business, or the coaching on any of the episodes in the Rise of the Trades podcast, I'm asking you to consider applying for my Inner Circle coaching program. This is a 12-month marketing and business coaching program where I take yourself and a small group of other tradesmen and women onto my program for live coaching every month, where we cover one particular topic off, and over the 12 months we'll grow and scale your business. However, this is only for businesses that are currently turning over a minimum of 120,000 up to 3 million. So if your business is turning over between 120 grand and up to 3 million, then please consider hitting the link around the description of this episode and applying for my Inner Circle. So thank you for joining me on this episode. And remember, the results you are looking for is in the work that you're avoiding. I'll see you on next week's episode, and I'll meet you at the top. Thank you.